Aspen Blomfield, Sky News Hobart.
Thousands more Australians will be killed every year. Homes will be at higher risk from erosion. Hundreds of billions of dollars will be wiped off our property market. Productivity will suffer because fewer people will want to work outdoors. According to a doomsday report from the National Climate Risk Assessment, that's what we could face over the next 50 years unless we do more to tackle the climate crisis, I should say. It is worth noting, though, Australia accounts for just over 1% of global emissions. And if the world's biggest emitters, including China, India, Russia and the US, continue on their current track, well, what we do won't make much difference to the global picture. Joining us now is the National Senator M.Canavan. Good morning to you. After all of that, Matt, makes for positive thoughts about the future?
Yeah, I wasn't so sure what you were quoting from there when you introduced me. I thought it might have been the Book of Daniel, not a government agency report, because it is so over-egged, this report. I mean, yes, Australia's apparently going to be just damned in a way that hasn't happened since the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, but I mean, I just think they've over-egged this. I think people are sick and tired of the boy who cried wolf act that Chris Bowen is now seemingly engaged in. It's actually worse than the boy who cried wolf, because the boy who cried wolf was just trying to have a laugh. These guys are cynically trying to increase the size of government, introduce new taxes, employ massive amounts of new climate bureaucrats who will intrude into every Australian's lives. The agenda so much is not to change the temperature of the globe, because, of course, Australia, as you have said, can't do that alone. The transparent agenda of this Labor government is to put more of the foot of government on everybody's neck. That's what they're trying to do here. But as I say, I think people have woken up to this, because this is just so ridiculous, so absurd. The headlines are always cherry-picked out of the detailed science. When you go into the detailed science, it is nowhere near worth the fear and panic that this government is trying to propagate around Australia.
How do you predict what happens in 2090?
Well, exactly. I mean, the Bureau of Meteorology said we were going to have another failed snow season this season, and I haven't had a chance to go down to Perisher. I don't know if you have, Peter, but from all reports, it's one of the best ever. And so this is a regular fact. And so, of course, there's large uncertainty around predictions in 60 years' time, yet those uncertainties don't come through in the headlines. And as I say, if you read the detailed report, so the report warns that we're going to have increased cyclones in one of its dramatic statements. When you go into the detail of that, you understand, in fact, that we are having fewer cyclones in Australia, and there is probably a chance we'll have fewer still in the future. The report says it has low confidence in those cyclones potentially increasing. But as I say, you don't hear that, like you don't get that in the headlines that scream from our major newspapers today and try and spread fear and panic. I think a responsible government would approach this issue in a sober way that seeks to lead Australians to best manage whatever climate risks there are going to be.
Well,
and clearly the way we should be doing that is become as rich as we can, so we can have the money and resources to mitigate any damage that's done by climate change.
So do you suspect that this gives Labor cover for more ambitious targets now?
Well, as I said, I think people are waking up to this ruse. We've been warned about this stuff for over 2 decades now. 2 decades ago, they were telling us our dams wouldn't fill up. Remember that? They don't say that anymore, because it was prediction was completely hopeless. And so quite often they get their predictions wrong. In our lifetimes, we've seen that. And so, as I say, just like the boy who cried wolf, eventually the village wakes up and stops listening to the warnings. And you know, maybe this time they're right. As I say, they've got a cynical agenda here, which is they're not being transparent about. I mean, you're saying that we're going to have more heat deaths, they're saying, but nowhere I can find, and I haven't read through all the 15 technical reports, but nowhere can I find them actually cataloguing the fact that about 6 to 9 times more people in Australia die from cold than they do from heat. And so clearly that should be a relevant factor to take into account here. But they're only cherry-picking the downside of increased carbon emissions, as I say, with the intent of trying to tax you harder.
Has the election result given the government licence to be more aggressive on its climate targets, though, because tackling climate change is important to the electorate?
Well, the Australian people weren't given a choice at the election on this issue. The government certainly didn't take higher emission targets to the election. They could have. Their Paris update was due earlier this year, but they They waited till after the election to have this discussion, so it hasn't gone to the Australian people. And I just hope that the next election of the next few years, we finally give Australians a choice on this radical agenda to try and fundamentally change how our economy works in just a generation. Net zero is the revolutionary idea that we would change how we drive, how we make things, how we grow our food, all within one generation. Nothing like this has ever been tried in world history. It is the biggest socialist project, government-led socialist project, that's what it is, that has ever been attempted. And like all socialist projects, it is going to end in tears. It already is causing massive damage because, as I say, their predictions keep being wrong. They said a few years ago that power prices would fall thanks to net zero. They've gone up by 40%. They said we'd have massive job increases in new critical industries and hydrogen. Almost all the major hydrogen projects, actually all the major ones, have fallen over. And we've lost the nickel industry, which was one of the critical minerals industries that the government was pinning its hopes on. And so they have had a hopeless agenda here that has failed the Australian people, that's only generated poorer incomes for Australia, lower incomes for Australians. It hasn't even reduced emissions. The emissions of Australia are at the same level as when this government came to power 3 years ago.
Matt, I'll have to leave it there. Thank you, though. We'll chat again soon. We've got to go to the White House because Donald Trump, the US president, is speaking. He signed a few documents this morning. He's got